Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Roots Refuge. We're heading in the high tunnel right now. I wanted to have a chat with you guys, and I figured I might as well pick some peppers while I do it. This is pretty consistently on my to-do list right now. As you can see, there are a lot of them. They're still rocking in production. And I'm definitely not picking all that we have. I have several people coming over and picking from this for their own use. I'm picking what we use, and as I have projects come up. But right now, I'm not trying to strip all the plants because I just wouldn't have anything to do with all of these. But I come out here and pick when I can. Today, I'm going to be going through and looking for bell peppers specifically because I was going to slice them into strips and freeze them, vacuum seal and freeze them for later use in like single serving packages. So when I want to make like a jambalaya or fajitas or something like that I need to saute some bell peppers, I'll already have them cut and prepared and measured. So I've been having some frank conversations with you guys lately, and I'm gonna ask for something that I've never asked for before. I started doing YouTube very routinely in 2018. I think I did my first videos in about 2015. So I've been here creating content on this platform for a long time regarding homesteading, gardening, and food. And I cannot recall ever, somebody may be able to find a video and prove me wrong here, but I do not think I have ever asked people to subscribe. My assumption has always been, you know how YouTube works, and if you want to subscribe you will, and if not, the algorithm will probably show you the videos anyway, so it's never really concerned me that much. However, a few weeks ago, I did a video about food costs and kind of how to navigate that as a person who doesn't have a lot of money and kind of facing the overwhelm of rising food costs. And great response, incredible response, very kind messages. I don't think there was a single negative response, at least that I remember, on there. And it got a pretty good amount of views, but since then, I have steadily lost a lot of subscribers regularly, and I started getting messages from people being like, I've been subscribed to your channel for 5 years, and all of a sudden I went to come look for your videos because I realized they haven't popped up in a few days. I thought maybe you weren't posting, and I realized that somehow I was unsubscribed to your channel. I'm really not trying to be like a woe is me kind of situation when I've done this long and I understand like the normal ebb and flow of content creation. Like, I don't freak out whenever my channel's not growing fast or when views are down, because it is very much a cyclical thing, especially when you're doing a lot of gardening. It's very seasonal. But I've talked about meat production. I've had some very frank conversations about feeling about the corruption in the food system and like different things like that. And this is the first time I've ever seen my algorithm do something that I'm like, huh, this is weird, like this is unusual. So if you do not mind, if you are a regular viewer of my channel and you would like to stay that way, if you do not mind going and double checking that you are subscribed to my channel. If you don't know how YouTube works, there's an option that you can, we call it hitting the bell, but essentially you turn on notifications so that when I post a video, you get a notification on your phone. I've never asked people to do that because frankly I don't have notifications turned on for anything. I like to keep my phone away from me as much as possible. But in this case, I'm even having some people message me. I've had I think 2 or 3 messages that have said they have notifications on but they're not getting notifications. So I don't know what's going on with that, but today I'm going to talk about something that is as controversial as anything else I could possibly talk about. And if that is actually resulting in significantly lower views and people getting unsubscribed to my channel, I just want to say like, hey, let's be aware if that could potentially be a possibility. Not saying that it is. I can't say that for sure. I don't like to state things factually unless I can actually factually prove it, and there's no way for me to prove that. But I do find it odd. That said, let's launch into my little pepper picking story time here. My son Jackson is a senior this year. My kids go to this tiny little private school here. It's really cool because we're getting to do some of the like traditional school things, being homeschool parents for so long that we didn't necessarily do, and it's fine. I loved homeschooling. We had the opportunity for the school when we moved here, and it worked for the season of life we're in. I may homeschool my kids again. I love homeschooling. I love the school that they're in now because there's a lot of freedom for parents to still make choices for their children there, which I really appreciate. But anyway, Jackson is a senior, and he is doing all the senior stuff. And today's homecoming, and this morning they had the senior breakfast, and it was his week to bring breakfast, which he told me about it like a month ago, and he asked if I'd be willing to make cinnamon rolls, which I used to make cinnamon rolls pretty frequently when we were homeschooling, when we had more time and breakfast could be later, but I haven't made them much since we moved here, largely being because we mostly eat gluten-free, so I haven't done a lot of the baked goods. I entirely eat gluten-free, but I don't cook a lot of that sort of thing, except for special occasions and when my kids specifically ask for it. So anyway, yesterday I went to look up the cinnamon roll recipe that I've used. It was a recipe that somebody had on a blog. She was sharing like her dad's cinnamon roll recipe, and I remember the photos were not like spectacular or anything. It was just a regular person sharing a regular recipe, and it was great. It was always fail-proof. It always worked for me. Somewhere I have that printed out, but I couldn't find it, so I was looking for the blog, and I could not find this blog. All right, you know, I got to interject with the garden stuff. Look at these sweet chocolate bell peppers. Aren't these lovely? Little side note here. With bell peppers, some people don't realize this, but a lot of bell peppers you get like sweet chocolate or purple majesty or California orange or any of the colorful bell peppers, they're all green until they change color. So with peppers, like all peppers are green until they start to ripen, and you can pick them green or you can wait till they're ripe. The flavor does change, but today I'm picking some ripe and some green because I want to kind of have a mix in what I'm freezing. Back to the topic at hand. So I'm looking for this cinnamon roll recipe. I'm going through and I'm finding, and I know this because I have a blog. The blog world has changed a lot in the last few years. It's become very, very saturated, but beyond that, with the easy access now to AI, many posts, when you Google something, those top posts are actually not written by a person. They're written by AI. And I could not find the recipe I was looking for, and I was going through all these blog posts, and I am pretty good at being able to spot an AI written post because sometimes the language isn't super natural and like it's just off a little bit, or there will be really repeated information. A lot of times in an AI post, it'll be like the same thing phrased like 4 different ways. But I'm looking, I finally settle on a recipe, and I start making this recipe, and pretty quickly in, I realized like, this is off. Like, this recipe's not gonna work. I put the ingredients in, I did what it said. It was so crumbly, it was so dry, and I was like, there's no way that this is a tested recipe. That's like a big pet peeve of mine, because whenever you put out information, you need to make sure that you're telling people the right thing so that they don't waste their time and their money. Like, that, it's always been an irritation of mine as a person who consumes content, and it's always been a standard I try to hold myself to as a person who creates content. But anyway, I was getting really frustrated, and I hold up my mixing bowl and I go, ugh, bad blogs. And like my kids and Jeremiah are sitting at the table, and they turn and look at me and they're like, what is it? And Jeremiah says to the kids, oh, Mom hates it whenever people give bad recipes that don't actually work. But I go back on and I'm trying to find another one. So I set those ingredients aside because I've got to bring cinnamon rolls for the senior class first thing the next morning. Like, I don't really have time to try to figure this out and make sure it's going to work. So I set it to the side and I'm like, I'll come back to that, and those will be our cinnamon rolls for at home. But I need to get a recipe that I know is going to work for in the morning because I'm not going to have time to redo this. Oh man. That one's got a yucky spot. I need to start a spot for it. Let me see. I'll take one of these pots and I'll start a collection to go over to the geese. So I end up finding another recipe that's like very highly reviewed. I actually looked up the blog, like I Googled the blog and like was finding other references to that blog. And I like had to check multiple times to make sure this is a legitimate person who has a successful career as a blogger and has been providing legitimate blog content ongoing before I started pouring a bunch of ingredients, because by the time that first recipe like proved to be like really not good, like just really off, and there were a few things in it. It was like at one point it said like 3/4 water. Like 3/4 what? It didn't say. And so I'm just like making some assumptions here, but it wasn't well done. And I ended up salvaging it just using common sense, and the cinnamon rolls turned out okay. Basically me tweaking it and adding to it and getting it to what I knew the consistency should be, not based on what the recipe told me to do. But anyway, I had to do like all this legwork to find a recipe that I felt like I could trust and not waste ingredients, because I didn't want to put some butter and 14 cups of flour and half a dozen eggs, and like that's a lot of ingredients. Now for us, I've got milk on tap and I've got eggs coming out my ears because of our farm, but had I bought all that stuff at the store, I mean, I would have wasted probably something around $35 or $40 worth of ingredients that I would have had to go purchase. If that first recipe, if I was just trying to follow it and I didn't know how to fix it and I didn't have that stuff in abundance. Given my circumstances, I was able to just kind of set that aside, start over, get something fail-proof, and then I ended up tweaking the recipe, getting it right. And then my kids at home had cinnamon rolls this morning, and I put some in the freezer for us to have later. So it was kind of no harm, no foul as far as like our particular situation goes, but I could see for a person who was a new cook and who didn't have just randomly, you know, like several dozen eggs and gallons of milk and stores worth of flour and yeast and butter and all that stuff, like I could see that would have completely ruined somebody's night had they experienced that. I sat down, I was frustrated. It ended up working out okay, but at this point I had gotten frustrated, and I sat down and Jeremiah said, what was it? Was it the whole AI blog thing? Because we've talked about the AI blog thing, he and I, pretty significantly. So if you are somehow unaware of the situation with AI, let me be the one to enlighten you. Within the last year or so, a lot of new technology has been rolled out at a consumer level for people to be able to use that uses artificial intelligence. I am not of the mind that this is only and always and all bad. I'm kind of like, I can definitely see some areas where this could be extremely problematic. I've heard of people who are way more tech savvy than me stating warnings about, hey, this could be extremely problematic. But I've not been like super alarmed by it or anything like that, because in my mind, authenticity rings true. There's been a lot of uproar like in artist communities and in poetry communities and with writers, because where AI can be prompted and trained to create content, let's say for art, for instance. You may have seen these apps, and they go viral on Facebook, where people will start posting AI art that they created through a prompter. Or there will be like AI photos where basically like you can put your image in and it'll show you in like lots of different situations, and it creates pictures that look a lot like you. I mean, why I've not participated in any of that stuff at all is because it basically then puts those images in like a pool of all the images that then can be used by AI to create more images. So I'm essentially plugging my face in to the pool. Now I'm a public figure, I make content all the time. My face is probably already in that pool and being used by AI. But you can see where that would be a really big issue for a person who like makes art, who paints. And you have essentially a computer with no conscious human thought creating art, but it's pulling from all of the public art that's on the internet to create that art. So it's essentially using what was created by human creativity and conscious thought to create something without human creativity and conscious thought. And the concern is for people like artists is, well, am I going to have a job? Is there going to be a want for human creativity and conscious thought? Right now, there's a lot of issues with AI. For instance, YouTube has recently brought out a new feature where they use artificial intelligence to prompt you with titles that they think will go viral. And I'll put a little picture here up on the screen for one that they suggested to me the other day. They just pop up automatically. And I was cooking in the kitchen with Ben, and YouTube suggested that I use the title, "We Eat Our Babies." Eat, all capitalized. And I'm like, well, yeah, that would go viral. That would definitely do it. And there's a lot of that stuff that happens that's just kind of like, ha-ha funny. Like, we eat our babies? That's ridiculous. Like, that, you know, people will just diminish that, or they'll see a picture of a person but they have 8 fingers. You know, it's like something is obviously very, very off about it, and therefore it can be dismissed. Now the thing is that not everybody has the sense or the wherewithal to go and Google the blog and double check and do all this legwork to make sure that the recipe's good. A lot of people will just blindly follow into something and waste $35 or $40 worth of ingredients. I mean, I did on the first one. But beyond that, a lot of people will believe what they see. At first, when I started seeing all this AI stuff and people saying all of these warnings about it and all these different things, I thought, well, come on, let's just use common sense. But since then, I've seen people sharing photos that are obviously not real, or it'll be posts that are obviously just absolutely not real. One example that I saw recently was this post, and it was a picture of this like extremely shiny black horse, and there was a man standing next to the horse. The top of this horse's shoulder was like 2 feet above this man's head, and its neck was really long, and I'm looking at it, and now I've been around some massive horses, like larger than life. It's hard to believe that they're real horses, but this horse, I'm looking at it, and it has that very shiny quality that a lot of AI pictures have. And I sit and I look at this photo for a long time. And I mean, this photo has gone viral. Like, people are sharing it. Somebody shared it and it was on my feed, and they were talking about what a majestic animal. And I'm looking for a long time, and it wasn't setting well with me. And I'm like, I couldn't tell for sure at first. I was like, surely that's not real. And then I'm looking at it longer, and then I start to think, is that real? And I sit and I look at it for a long time, and then I notice that the horse's hooves were cloven. They were like goat's hooves. And I knew that, oh, that's not a real photo. Like, this is not a real animal. And it's raised this skepticism in me that's like, man, as this gets better and better, it's going to be really hard to know what's real or not. And I'm saying that as a person who questions everything. Like, I question everything. Like, I don't take nearly anything I read or hear or see. I'm going to do my own research and come to my own conclusions. I know that a lot of people aren't like that. Look at those beauties. Very nice. So there's this other issue that's kind of happening, and it's the same issue, but I've been getting a lot of messages about it over the last like month or so, and I think someone kind of raised the concern on Facebook, and it started getting shared a lot, especially in homesteading and foraging groups. But there's this new thing with AI written books, and right now, there are a lot of people pursuing, obviously, like more income, especially like stay-at-home incomes. And one of the things that is being taught to do is to self-publish books on Amazon and basically have AI write the books, and then you publish them on Amazon, and then they just sell and you just make money. And apparently, there are several books in like the foraging, gardening, and homestead community. And the covers all look very generic. They all look very much the same. I'll find some pictures from these posts and throw them up here. And if you look up the author of these books, they're always generic. They're not real people. There will be a generic name, kind of a generic looking picture. And if you go search that person, you will find nothing about them. Okay? So if you're going to buy a book that tells you what mushrooms are safe to eat, you need to know that the person who wrote that knows what they're talking about. If you're going to buy a book about herbal medicine and you're going to bank on that information, you need to know that the person who wrote that book actually knows their stuff. You do not want to lean in to information like that that's not real. Because yeah, it sucks whenever you're trying to make cinnamon rolls and you realize, man, this recipe is really cruddy, it's not going to come together. But if you ingest a mushroom that is not something that you need to be eating, it might be way more costly than $35 worth of flour, eggs, and milk. At first I thought, surely this isn't super prevalent, but then I realized that it is becoming more and more prevalent. So I started digging into it and looking, and there are actually quite a few mysterious new books by mysterious authors in the homesteading, gardening, foraging, herbal medicine genres. Now, if we assume positive intent from everyone involved, we can say, well, people are just trying to capitalize on the fact that this is a really popular niche and that this is selling. If you don't know this, the homesteading and gardening niche became the fastest growing niche on YouTube in 2020. In the aftermath of COVID and food shortages, food supply issues, rising costs, all the things that have been consistently in the news regarding food insecurity, a lot of people are turning to homesteading. Hey, I'm all for that. I love that. Even though I don't like the circumstances, I think everybody should live this way, whether it was a necessity or not. We maybe can assume that people are just trying to get on that and make some money. It's still cruddy, but there's also could be a more sinister thing behind it, in that if a person is trying to learn and they're brand new and they can't just Google it and follow a recipe, if they can't just go on Amazon and buy a book and know that it is consistently good information, then they can't learn. They can't do this stuff, and therefore they can't have the freedoms that it offers. And so I'm not here to say what the motive is behind it, though I definitely feel like it's extremely detrimental. I'm here to say to you, double check your sources, and right now, if you have good information, get it in writing where it cannot be altered. Print things out. You need to be making your own collection of information. You need to go get a 3-ring binder from the store, and if you find information that you know to be tried and true, print it out. Get it in a hard copy where it cannot be altered. Because I am telling you right now, I've been in the homesteading world for the last 15 or so years. I haven't been making content but for about 8 of those, but prior to that I was consuming content. I was reading all the blogs there were, I was getting all the books at the bookstore. Now I've written a couple of books and I can vouch for my books being genuine information that came from genuine experience, but there are a lot of books out there that are just regurgitated information. It's not from somebody's experience. There is a lot of information that is getting produced because this is such a popular topic and because there is greed in the world and people are just trying to make as much money as possible. There are tools being sold that are not going to work for you. There are things that are being taught that are not going to work for you because it's just people trying to make money. And I hate that that's how it is. And I know we're all trying to make money in some degree, but not everybody is doing that with integrity. The thing that I wanted to say today, after my little cinnamon roll debacle, is because I thought, you know what, I've got to find where I printed that recipe out. Now, there are plenty of great cinnamon roll recipes. People probably share cinnamon roll recipes in the comments of this video. That's not really the point. That was an inconsequential situation that I ran up against the flood of information, of everybody repeating a lot of the same things, whether people, individuals, corporate groups, or an AI system that's being run by a person who gives zero cares if your cinnamon rolls turn out right. They're just trying to make $1. If you have to weed through that now. You did not have to weed through that so much 10 years ago. I mean, there was just not that much information out there. And so now I think that the thing that I really am trying to say more than anything is you need to put on your wisdom glasses, and you need to every single thing that you look at, that you read, and especially if you were going to spend money on following somebody's instruction or buying a book or following some sort of information, double check it. I would say absolutely, without a doubt, if you're going to purchase a book, if you get a book from the library and you're going to follow the instructions, if you go look up a blog and you're going to follow the recipe, double check it first. Before you spend a bit of your time, your dollars, or especially your health on something, double check it and make sure that it's a legitimate source to the greatest of your capacity. Now, beyond that, there has been a lot of censorship over the last few years. Again, we can take different stances on what the intention behind that censorship has been, but we cannot argue the fact that there has been censorship. If you were to use the hashtag natural immunity 2.5 years ago, you were shadow banned. There's not a question about that. This is no longer up for debate. That is an absolute real thing that happened. The hashtag natural immunity was shadow banned on social media 2 years ago. That is a proven, and that's fact. And with that being the case, if you are interested in natural immunity, if you're interested in growing food, if you're interested in herbal medicine, if you're interested in making cinnamon rolls, if you have information that you know is good and true, put it in a hard copy. Make sure, not just save it on your computer, not just save the link, print it out. If you have a book that you know is solid, get a copy of the book, buy it used if you have to, whatever it is that you need to do. If you have my permission, I don't think I'm actually allowed to say this legally because of publishing, but if you were to go get my books from the library and handwrite down what they say in them, I wouldn't mind. I'm not saying this to try to sell you anything. I'm telling you, if you have not realized this through common sense at this point, I'm going to go ahead and raise the awareness for you. Get good information in writing right now. Because any time that you're seeing censorship of any kind in a society, information, solid, reliable information is the first thing to go. That is absolutely imperative. It is very, very important. It is a resource that cannot be easily replaced. And right now, there is still a lot of really good information. Maybe it'll stay that way. I'm an optimist. I like to think like that. But when I start to see censorship anywhere, I like to create resources that cannot be censored. So that's my little word for you today in the pepper tunnel while I picked my bucket of peppers. And again, that might be taken wrongly, but at this point, I don't really care. I just don't care if it's taken wrongly. I can't control how people receive the things that I say, and I feel strongly enough about this that I would rather you have your solid cinnamon roll recipe than have to waste your eggs and your milk. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. God bless you. Until next time.